I had to make a conscious decision, and this is what the Navy said to me was, if you do that, if you're going to, charge your blood up to 250,000 volts and infuse yourself with plasmoids, right, then it will probably kill you. And I said, well, great, I win-win. If I die, I get to know the secret of the universe. And if I live, I get to share it with others. How can I lose? Right?
Alchemical Science. I'm Jordan Cullen, an independent researcher, an alchemist, and a student of the inventor and vortex fusion specialist Malcolm Bendall. I have a very interesting one for you today. Recently, some new information and inside coverage of the rather mysterious ex-Navy scientist Guy Obolinski and his frequency or plasmoid healing chamber, variously named the phaser chamber, Teslatron, Tesla healing chamber, or plasmoid infusion chamber, was released. This chamber is of course based on the same technology as Nikola Tesla's healing chamber of the same names variously. Malcolm has made some pretty wild statements about his plasmoid infusion in the past, and people have either been fascinated, often asking how they could infuse themselves, or alternatively they've thought the whole thing was a bit sci-fi and mad to be real. The new articles that have recently been released on Medium by the account Adam tell the story of another's experience in the chamber, and he actually provides some incredible photographs of inside the chamber when it's active, which were taken for the film that they were there to document, apparently, eternal youth, and for which the photographer supposedly sacrificed several iPhones to the machine's arcing plasma tendrils attempting to capture. It turns out many people experience what it was like to be in Guy Obolinski's chamber, although few have told their tale before now. It was a little underground. So we're going to take a look at these stories in this video too. But Malcolm's experiences were a bit different again to the stories told in these new Medium articles. Malcolm spent 3 months inside the chamber, several hours every day, and they took the shielding or the lens off the machine, which he mentions and the articles talk about as well. He took the healing chamber hero dose, if such a term can be applied to plasmoid infusion. The goal of Malcolm's experiences in the chamber were different from most too. While most people who heard about Guy Obolinski's underground healing machine entered for a short period to feel rejuvenated or even to treat various ailments, including cancer, Malcolm entered the machine in pursuit of knowledge and to form a connection with the elemental beings which the machine produced, and which he has always called the plasmoids, although I've heard them called many things. I'll let Malcolm tell you that story for himself in the following clips. If you hold out right until the end of the video too, I'll also be publishing a previously unpublished, as far as I am aware, presentation about the phaser chamber technology, or the Teslatron, which I've also linked to in the description so you can back up a copy yourself. I know very little about the device myself or this technology outside what I can tell you today, so I won't provide any commentary to this, but I just wanted to release it to ensure that it continues to exist as it's related. Remember that you'll find a lot of other resources in the description, including the link to my own website, as well as strikefoundation.earth, where you will find Malcolm Bendall's Alpha and Omega ladder, the plasmoid unification model, and other notes and lectures, all printable. And also the links to order copies of Roland Perry's new book, Oliphant, the history of one of the great Australian scientists involved in the evolution of cold fusion, and also his previous book, The Shaman, a novel based on Malcolm Bendall's life. They're all there in the description, the links to check out after this video. But first, I have met several scientists who have had the pleasure of visiting or working with Guy Obolinski. Malcolm, of course, who not only became a subject of his experiments, but also apprenticed under him, and he considers Guy as one of his most important teachers. But also John Esmeyer, who worked closely with Guy on the technology and was often involved in helping people with the infusion process. He's also mentioned in the articles. And also the alchemist and the inventor of the Therify, Paul Harris, who also considered Guy a friend and a teacher. And I also had the recent surprise to find out Professor Robert Haralick too, who we've of course featured on the channel before. So before I play some clips of Malcolm talking about his experiences in Guy Obolinski's plasmoid infusion chamber, and also a clip of John Esmeyer, who verifies Malcolm's story and tells of his experience supervising Malcolm's infusion firsthand, let's hear a clip first from Robert Haralick, where he tells the story of the time he asked Guy Obolinski if he could become his apprentice.
Yes, he brought the name of Guy Obolinski. I'll tell you a little story. I lived upstate New York from the city by about a half an hour 45-minute drive in the Rockland County. 20 minutes away from me is Guy Obolensky in Sloatsville, a small village. And I had some connections with people who connected me with Guy Obolensky. Guy Obolensky was an amazing person. He had an amazing knowledge. He actually replicated all of Tesla's stuff. He knew it. And here I was, distinguished professor, and I'm coming into contact with Guy Obolensky, who knows all kinds of things other people don't know. And of course, the mind of a scientist is filled with curiosity. And I wanted to know more. I wanted to learn more. And I would be meeting with Guy once and twice a week, helping him in his laboratory, in his shop. And I asked him, can I be your apprentice? Because here was somebody who knew things beyond what was in the textbooks. Guy never answered me. When Malcolm and I met, I forget how it arose, but Guy Obolensky arose. I think maybe he said something about that. Yes, he said something about it because Guy Obolensky had an instrument, a machine, a Tesla machine, if you will, that would emit plasmoids. And when those plasmoids reach your body and come into the body, they help heal all kinds of illnesses, even cancers. Anyway, so Guy had this small little clinic going on, basically, where people would come in and stay in the machine for an hour or so. And Malcolm was doing it for more than an hour or so. And he was there. And when Malcolm and I met, and Guy Obolensky was mentioned in conjunction with the plasmoids that Malcolm was absorbing, we realized that we had something in common. And we knew the reason why Guy Obolensky never accepted me as an apprentice. Do you know why? Because Malcolm was his apprentice at that time. Isn't that an amazing story?
All right, now that we've heard from Robert, we will hear directly from Malcolm about his experiences and from John Esmeyer, who supervised Malcolm's plasmoid infusion. Before we move on to read through some of the highlights of these new Medium articles by Adam, which shed even more light on Guy Obolensky, the machine in his basement, and what it was like to be inside the chamber, even the time dilation phenomena that they measured. He gives some quite vivid descriptions, so hold out for that.
You know, on the island it was easy for me because I didn't have to communicate with humans. And one of the biggest adjustments when I came back into society was the fact that I didn't recognize it as it was no longer part of my reality. You know what I mean? All of the things you couldn't say, like had now become all my truths. The 7 years of prayer and fasting and pushing in after being infused with plasmoids. Now, you couldn't believe the synchronicity of it. The person that supervised my infusion with plasmoids, because I'd recognized that plasmoids were in fact where you get your intuition from. Because, and if you were going to have wisdom, then, like I thought, well, I was trying to finish the unification model. spent 50 years trying to figure it out, and I couldn't. And I was 55. Those days, I suppose it was 40 years in the wilderness, and I'd been in the wilderness for long enough. I couldn't understand it, and so I said to my minders in the CIA and the U.S. Navy, I said, "Look, I can't work it out. It's beyond me. I can see the shadows of it, but I can't figure it out." I said the only thing I can figure out that if I infuse myself with plasmoids, then I should be able to, have free access to the 0 point where there is no time space. So everything that has been and everything that will be is there to see, that which is variously called the Akashic record, or finding the 0 point, finding the eye of the hurricane. And that it's a very good parable for the earth to realize is that, and humans to realize, is that if you look at a hurricane, until the still center forms, it might be like 30-mile-an-hour winds. But once that perfect still center forms, you've got 300 miles an hour winds, right? And as soon as that still center gets disturbed, the the winds collapse again down to nothing, maybe, this, and the still center is still. And the wall, the eye of the hurricane, the eye of the eye of the tornado is still. So the parable was that if I could join the still center, then I could download, which, if I was removed from humanity on my island with no one disturbing me, and I could sort of, after I'd been infused. Now, at the conference, which is amazing, the man that supervised that infusion, and it was Guy Obolinski's a very advanced machine, which was in upstate New York at Sloatsburg. So the man that did that will be coming to the conference, because my challenge was, to say to humanity, well, all my notes and everything that I downloaded was in the still voice. That's form and function. That is, it's not a sentence you read. And I think, the Moray King said something. I think the most profound thing in my life that anyone's ever said to me was Moray King said, "Malcolm, I've read your notes. You couldn't have called anyone and got those notes, and they're not in any library. What process did you go through to get that information?" And so, that's what I decided to share at this conference. Not only the validation of that, but we've now rebuilt Obolinski's machine, right? So as other people can infuse themselves with plasmoids for two reasons. One is it gives, there's in Habakkuk in the Bible, it says, "Write it clearly so others may follow." And what I realized, that even though my path was torturous, and extreme, I think then when I say extreme, praying and fasting for 40 days at a time, which is extreme. But the point is that it was a determination that I wanted to know, to get the unification model, because my grade 6 teacher said to me, "Bendel," he said, because I said, people were saying what they wanted to do in their life, and what other people were saying, "I want to be a fireman and a policeman," I was saying I wanted to develop a car that ran on water. So, it was an unusual thing. But when I realized I just couldn't do it, because what my very wise grade 6 teacher said, "Bendel, you'll never be able to design a car that ran on water, because no one has the unification model until you know how everything's put together, and you only can prove that when you can put everything together." So basically what happened was, the process was, it was a 3-month process to infuse myself with plasmoids. Anyway, so
John Eschmeyer, are you here at all? I was hoping, oh, John, can you just come up? This is my story. You might have heard that I took the decision to risk my life and infuse myself with plasmoids. The man that supervised that, and these are all people from a decade ago. I disappeared on my island for 7 years, and you can't believe that everyone's just come back together again. It's gone full circle. So I think that I'd like to thank, well, I don't know, there's a lot of work, so, and it's the first time we've met for 10 years. Yeah, and I'd just like to bring John up here because a lot of people, I just want to validate the history of the story, and I'll give a summary of that, but just a quick 1 minute thing was just I said to John he could come up and just say yes. The machine that I went in, where you can see your acupuncture points and you can see the actual streams of poison coming out of your body, and John's been working on, Guy Belinsky and John originally put the machine together. John supervised over a 3-month period my infusion when I could keep taking it. And so now he can tell you, write it clearly so others may follow. So therefore there is a path to infuse yourself with plasmoids, and yeah.
As Malcolm said, it's been a long, long, long trip. I started working on this project, was asked by Guy Belinsky, that some of you may know his name and some may not. He was the original reinventor of what he called at the time phaser technology, which was using scalar wave technology and superluminal shock waves to create cold plasma and excuse me, ignite a room that had was an environmentally stable room, specific humidity and temperatures and so forth. Ignite that room and the vapor in that room into a cold plasma form. That cold plasma form communicates with your physiology and the water in your body, and you find any inflammation that one has is reduced. And when I was asked by Belinsky to help him finish it, because he said, I won't live forever, I took a look at it, and having had a history of taking projects that were impossible and making them work, mostly just because if someone says it can't be done, then I got to do it. I looked at it and I said, okay, I figure about 2 years I can do this. Well, we started this down this road in 2005. So if nothing else, I've endured.
Used myself with plasmoids. We built the machine with Guy Belinsky. Yep. And spent 3 years living in New York, and then when we were getting ready, I actually moved up for the 3 months to near Sloatsburg, where Guy Belinsky's lab was, and the infusion machine. And so, and that was John Eschmeyer, who turned up at the Cosmic Summit conference, who confirmed that, and I hadn't seen him for 10 years, yeah? So confirmed that he supervised my infusion with the plasmoids.
We just got to be a little careful this doesn't come across too like Marvel cinematic, it's almost turning into like a hero movie, it's got that feel. So
Yeah, it kind of is.
you're going to save the universe and you're injecting yourself with all this stuff. It's like there could be a movie made out of this, and you could become
the thing is that
the new caped hero.
Is that I was advised by Guy Belinsky, and there were waivers and everything in place from the U.S. Navy, because there was U.S. Navy guys, Michael Milich, who's now passed away, RIP, but he was the one that said, Malcolm, if you do this, you'll probably kill yourself, and he advised not to do it. So I think the story needs to be told, and this story needs to be told you'll see why by the end of this interview, hopefully, is that it had an unusual effect. I did it so that I could figure out the plasmid unification model, which is on my T-shirt. And so I had been working on that for up until I was 55. That's just 10 years ago now. I just turned 66. So, and I hadn't been able to figure it out, but neither had Tesla or Einstein or Maxwell or anyone. Right, so not even Leonardo da Vinci or any of the great Plato or anyone in history. I can't find any evidence that anyone did that. There was a point at which I was focusing on wanting to find the secret of the universe and prepared to die in the attempt. But I didn't think of how the plasmoids that are sentient beings would respond to that. And it was interesting because, they're the most powerful entities in the universe, but they're also run on very strict guidelines. They are the homeostatic mechanism or the control mechanism for the universe. They are the guardians of the galaxy, literally. They keep the moon the right size and traveling at the right velocities, and they try and keep everything in within boundaries so that people can live on the planet. Yep, and that the biosphere is healthy and hasn't any destructive, overcharging of the atmosphere. And that's what the plasmoids do. They jump out of the Earth, create ionized paths that lightning comes down, which is effectively before the amount of energy in the atmosphere becomes dangerous to life, including plants and animals. Then the plasmoids jump out of the Earth, make an ionized path, and just bring, balance back before it gets so far out of balance it starts killing living entities. So that's their job. Their homeostatic mechanism, guardians of the galaxy, and so they are the sentient life force. And the recent book by Robert Temple, The Science of Heaven, recommend people read that. And so that comes into where we're going, because when I did that, I really wanted to reach the Akashic record and to get a relationship with the plasmoids, which I did. And that 3-month process, suddenly I could sort of sense them and communicate. And then when I went on the island by myself, about after 3 months, I could really just hear them plainly. And actually, it was quite offensive when I went into public then and back, and everyone knows I just don't like big crowds anymore or noise, because it stops me hearing that still voice. A few irrefutable truths here. Number one, which I had John Eschmeyer up on the stage at the Cosmic Summit and testified to the fact that I was infused with plasmoids. It was done in collaboration with the US Navy and in collaboration with Guy Obolinski, and he had all Tesla's devices, like even he had the original Tesla transformers, he had a lot of Tesla's equipment, and he had several of Tesla's boxes, the same ones you'll see the pictures at his hotel, which were taken by Donald Trump's uncle.
From Uncle Trump, yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah. So it was working for the FBI at the time. But those obviously went to the top scientists, and Guy Obolinski was arguably the top scientist in the world. I went there to get him to help me because I couldn't figure out the unification model. He couldn't either. And so I said, the only thing, the world needs this.
Alright, now that you've heard firsthand from Malcolm, I will read through several of the most interesting of these articles published on Medium by Adam. He really paints a picture here, and he verifies a lot of what Malcolm is talking about. So if you're as fascinated as this stuff like me, you're going to find this really, really interesting. I have, of course, linked to all of the full articles in the description as well, so you can go and check them out. Oh, and one more thing beforehand. I wanted to include this clip from the film Eternal Youth, which the article mentions quite a lot, and the writer was obviously involved in producing with the filmmaker Michael Leonardo. It's only a few minutes long, so I hope they don't mind me playing it before we read through the article, and I've linked to the full film Eternal Youth on their channel in the description as credit.
Well, I think that the practices of the great yogis is the best way to slow down the aging process. Well, the most remarkable is simply levitation, because that really organizes all of the atoms in every cell of the body into one coherent state. And then you can become transparent to the gravity field. The understanding of phasor, really, this is what Tesla was spending his whole later life working on. That's the phasor stands for force amplification by stimulated energy resonance. And laser stands for light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation. The laser is only 10% efficient. The phasor is basically 100% efficient. And what Tesla was doing was basically phase conjugating, and that term really means taking advantage of atomic time reversal to reverse the entropy that's produced. All natural processes get chaotic over time. And by reversing the entropy, or they call it time reverse light in the journals that describe this technique, this is a mechanical process or an electrical process or an atomic process, depending on what the medium is. Yogananda essentially let me understand that you can accomplish anything you believe in. So the most important thing is to believe. And once you believe, it is.
All right, that was Guy Obolinski himself. Now let's read through the articles from Adam on Medium. These are just some of the best picks. You can go and check them all out afterwards. Okay, this is the first of the articles that he published on this topic. The Hidden Machine of Sloatsburg, Guy Obolinski's Secret Phaser Chamber 999. In a stone house on Orange Turnpike, a Cold War weapon scientist turned Tesla's legacy into a machine meant to heal instead of destroy. Here is a photo of the chamber. There'll be a few throughout the articles, some of it running. From 1940s weapons labs to a secret basement in New York, Guy Obolinski's journey carried him from building tools of war for Eisenhower's America to inventing the mysterious phaser chamber, a Tesla-inspired device said to restore resonance and vitality. This is the untold story of the inventor, the machine, and the witnesses who saw it hum to life. The Hidden Machine in Sloatsburg. On the Orange Turnpike in the small village of Sloatsburg, New York, there's a stone house, 3 stories tall, river rocks stacked by hand in the 19th century, red window frames holding fast against weather. To a passerby, it's only a relic. To those who knew, it was a cover. In the basement, behind a heavy wooden door, stood a machine few in the world have ever seen, the phaser chamber. It does not look like progress. It looks like disorder. Meters with black dials, variacs with Bakelite knobs, copper coils wound by hand, spools stacked on shelves like war rations, a workbench scarred by soldier burns and forgotten prototypes. But when the switches are thrown and the current runs, the machine comes alive. 10 minutes, and then the smell, ozone, the sharp tang of thunder before rain. That smell signals readiness and the invisible forces awake. Inside, the air hums. Energy bends invisibly, presses against the chest. You do not just hear it, you feel it. That's a photo of outside Guy Obolinski's lab. The man behind the machine. Guy Obolinski, 1929 to 2018, carried history in his name. His grandfather, Prince Alexander Sergeyevich Obolinski, fled Russia after the revolution of 1917. His family traced its line back to Rurik, the first Tsar of Kievan Rus. In America, titles mean little. The young Obolinski pursued physics. By the 1940s, America's laboratories were hungry for talent. Radar, radio, and electromagnetic weapons research accelerated under the Office of Naval Research and later ARPA. By 1952, Dwight Eisenhower was in the White House and the Cold War was sharpening. Projects with names like Project Nicholas and Operation Argus explored the military potential of high-frequency radiation, plasma discharges, and atmospheric resonance. Obolinski's specialty, electromagnetic fields and plasma physics, put him squarely in that world. His colleagues spoke of his work in experimental energy, sometimes for defense, sometimes for medicine. He touched the military machine directly, and the military machine shaped him. The weapons leave a weight on the inventor. The classified reports, the signatures that no one erases. Out of that burden, Obolinski conceived something different. The phaser chamber was his answer. If his past inventions had fractured, phaser would restore. Where weapons tore apart, this machine would heal. Friends said it was his attempt to negate karma, to balance the ledger of life spent bending physics towards destruction. And here's a photo of Guy Obolenski and the filmmaker Michael Leonardo. Witnesses to the hidden lab. In 2011, while working on a documentary called Eternal Youth, filmmaker Michael Leonardo was introduced to Obolenski by an intelligence contact. The agent told him most casually, "If you want to understand real longevity work, you should meet Obolenski. He knows things." Leonardo drove to the stone house in Sloatsburg and was shown into the basement. There stood the chamber, ringed with coils and dials. He saw it power up. He smelled the ozone. He carried away photographs and notes, a filmmaker's record of a machine that most people had never heard of. Later came John, who entered the chamber itself. His presence inside the humming structure gave it scale, a human body against wire, steel, and resonance. The photograph of him inside is what makes the story real. A man surrounded by a machine that looks at once homemade and unearthly. 3 characters now, the builder, the witness, the explorer, each tied to the same quiet basement in the Ramapo Mountains. And here's another photo of the phaser chamber, the original with John Esmeyer, I believe. A laboratory hidden in plain sight. From the road, the building looks like a farmhouse or a small museum. No guard posts, no gates, just a stone facade holding its secrets. Next door stood Obolenski's modest home, smaller, wooden, unremarkable. In that house he lived quietly, moving between the kitchen and the workbench, a prince's grandson reduced to soldier and schematics. The shelves in the workshop tell their own story. Spools of enamel-coated copper wire, red and green, hand-wound Tesla coils, analog meters with cracked glass. Nothing sleek, nothing modern, a laboratory disguised as clutter. Obolenski drew direct inspiration from Nikola Tesla, who had experimented with wireless resonance less than 40 miles away in Wardenclyffe, Long Island. Tesla died alone in 1943, his final patents seized by the FBI. Obolenski carried the lineage forward, not through institutions but in a basement where the air itself could be charged. Outside, the Ramapo Mountains held the silence. The Hudson Valley had always hidden experiments, IBM's research centers, Cold War radar arrays, secret signal intercept stations. The Sloatsburg lab became part of that pattern, a clandestine outpost in plain sight. What it felt like. The phaser chamber was not elegant. It was not meant to be. It was built from scrap wood, old capacitors, rewound transformers, coils, hand-wrapped until fingertips bled. But when it switched on, beauty was irrelevant. Inside, some felt as a storm before lightning, others as silence pressing down on the lungs. Invisible resonance ran like a second bloodstream. Skeptics called it dangerous. Believers said it healed. The chamber's design echoed Tesla's theories that every cell, every organ, every life has a frequency, and that by restoring resonance you could restore health. The government had looked at such principles for weapons, disrupting radar, disabling electronics, even biological warfare. Obolenski reimagined it for the opposite. These appear to be some of the electronics outside of the chamber. Contradictions and legacies, 369. Guy Obolenski's life was a contradiction. He built weapons for power and then machines for healing. He lived in a stone house with a laboratory hidden in its basement, plain to see, yet invisible to most. History remembers his family name more than his machine. Yet those who stood in the chamber, those who saw it hum, carry a different memory. Technology is never good or evil. It is a mirror. A man builds what his time demands and then spends the rest of his life trying to unbuild it. The phaser remains, wound copper, glass meters, 10 minutes to ozone, a chamber that waits in the dark, humming faintly like a promise the world has not yet chosen to understand. And here we see the phaser chamber in action with someone lying down in there. The photo by Michael Leonardo. And that's the first article. Let's take a look at the second one. If you go and check out this article, you see some great resources there as well, which I'll share too. Alright, here's the second article. Inside the Chamber, my first encounter with Guy Obolenski's hidden invention. What began as an interview for a film turned into a direct initiation into a technology few have ever experienced. This was released on September 10th, 2025, and here's a photo of Guy Alexis Obolenski, the man himself. Part 2, The Invitation. In 2011, our path crossed with Guy Alexis Obolenski for the first time. The official reason was simple enough, an interview for Eternal Youth, a film about longevity, energy, and the possibility of extending human vitality beyond its accepted limits. But what began as a routine day with cameras and questions quickly shifted into something stranger, more intimate, an initiation into the hidden world. A 3-story stone building in Sloatsburg, New York. This is just the photo we saw earlier. Obolensky lived and worked in Sloatsburg, New York. From the road, his workshop looked like nothing more than an aging stone building 3 stories high, with a small adjoining house where he stayed. Neighbors thought of it as a relic from another era. Few guessed that in its basement, coiled wires and humming transformers waited like sleeping giants. It was, in truth, a clandestine laboratory hidden in plain view. He greeted us in his usual way, gentle, direct, and with an intelligent focus that seemed to narrow the air around him. He wasted no time with pleasantries. Instead, he sat down, adjusted his chair, and began to tell stories. Stories of physics, of resonance, of his years working on weapons contracts with General Electric, and of the guilt that had shadowed him ever since. Stories of Nikola Tesla's unfinished work, of Paramahansa Yogananda's teachings, of the strange unity between vibration, energy, and the human spirit. Our cameras rolled. For hours we captured his voice, his movements, the cadence of a man who'd carried secrets too long. Most of that footage would never make it to the final cut of the film. The movie went in other directions, but fragments of that day remain. Him speaking of resonance as though it were both scientific law and spiritual scripture. It was only after the cameras cooled and the cables began to coil back into cases that his eyes shifted, and he asked the question that would alter the course of everything. Would you like to try it? The room fell quiet. We didn't need to ask what it meant. Beneath our feet, in the basement of that stone house, was the chamber, the invention he believed could heal what medicine could not. He explained the conditions like a ritual. Before entering, we were to drink a full liter of water. Hydration was essential, he said. The body needed conductivity for the process to unfold. And then we would wait 10 minutes as the chamber powered up. And during that time, the smell of ozone would thicken the air, a byproduct of high-frequency discharges as the coils aligned. Only when the ozone scent was sharp enough to tingle the nose would it be ready. The chamber itself felt alive before it was ever switched on, and the copper-coloured walls seemed to hold a faint charge, as though they remembered every session that had taken place inside of them. Light reflected strangely off the coils and polished metal surfaces, sometimes sharp and clinical, other times soft, like the glow of candle behind glass. When the power began to climb, the hum started low and steady, like the sound of an engine far away. Then came the sharper textures, a crackle at the edges of perception, almost like invisible rain hitting a metal roof. The ozone arrived next, sharp in the nose, a dry electric scent that made the skin feel prickly, as though fine hairs were standing at attention. And then here's a very cool photo of the chamber running. I'm not sure for what purpose, but very cool plasma activity. Inside, the air felt thicker, not suffocating but charged. Moving an arm felt different, as if the atmosphere itself resisted slightly, dense with resonance. And then there was the body sensation, a tingling that began in the hands and feet, and then moved inwards, settling in the bones. It wasn't pain, it wasn't heat, it was closer to rhythm, like being surrounded by a sound so low that it couldn't be heard, only felt. For some, the experience was calming, almost meditative. For others, it was overwhelming, the sheer physicality of resonance pressing on nerves and thoughts alike. Everyone agreed, though, when you stepped out, the world outside felt sharper, clearer, as if the body had been tuned to a different frequency. Here's another very cool photo inside the chamber. The first to step inside was John Esmeyer, a friend and fellow traveler in our circle. Obolensky observed carefully, eyes on the dials and meters, every twitch of his hand precise. We watched breathless, half scientists and half disciples as the minutes passed. It was not a spectacle, it was not drama, it was quiet, focused, and strangely moving. When John stepped out, his face carried a stillness that we'd not seen before, and then it was my turn. And there's another photo of Michael Leonardo there at the end of the article. Alright, the next one I wanted to read, this skips quite a few, so you can go back and read them yourself, go and check them all out. But this one, Between Light and Silence, the chamber's growing constellation, is very interesting and just gives a little bit of an outside perspective on it all again. Sloatsburg, New York, autumn 2014, the chamber at dusk. The courtyard was quieter now. The last summer's chorus of crickets had thinned to a sparse rhythm, and the air carried the crisp edge of early autumn. Yet inside the house, the hum of the chamber never stopped, and had become a heartbeat of its own steady magnetic insistent. By now, the network had grown wider than I could have imagined when I first set foot here. From New York to Mexico, Bali to the Balkans, whispers about the chamber passed through hands and over borders like contraband, though what it carried was light, not shadow. The circle widens. They all swapped stories about what happened inside and what was working for them. Guy was the feature. He gave his time to everyone, listening carefully, offering advice, and helping each person unpack their experience. They all loved him for it, praising his insight and warmth. Over that time, Guy's courtyard had turned into something like a salon of the impossible. On any given day, you might find a cardiologist sipping coffee behind an intelligence officer, a healer sharing notes with a financier, or a famous actor listening quietly while a Dominican driver described his president's interests in the machine. It wasn't a clinic, not a lab, not a church. It was something in between, a place where secrecy and revelation wove themselves into the air. Here's another fantastic photo from inside the chamber. Stephen Sinatra was still returning, quietly observing, asking questions no one else dared to. His journals filled with notes that tried to make sense of what he experienced in the chamber, subtle improvements in energy, inexplicable moments of clarity, a feeling of reset that defied medical language. He called it coherence, as if the body and time itself were being brought back into alignment. Nicholas Perricone, ever the alchemist of youth, still swore by its effects, his weekly ritual sharpening his edges before the cameras of Manhattan, but he was no longer alone in his belief. He had convinced 2 other doctors to visit, and both walked away unsettled, their skepticism cracked by what they saw and felt. Through it all, Guy was happy with the flow of people finding their way to the chamber, and with money coming in to fund the next evolution, all was flowing well. We would chat in the evenings about the upgrades, the new power supplies, the challenge of refining all the raw equipment into something streamlined, and the paperwork to ship this kind of technology, the iconic wind spar. The paperwork now was simple and innocent. Guy settled on a name for the equipment, Iconic Wind Spar. Innocent enough to transport, sounded lightweight. He sent me the paperwork, and I still laugh when I think about this. God, I hope this goes well, I said one night, half laughing, half praying. The blueprint rolled out across the table between us. It was hard to say whether we were building the future or reviving some old world technology, rebirthed and now refined. The design could be flat-packed, assembled anywhere, and looked something like a garden shed crossed with an infrared sauna, a hybrid shelter for possibility. Central Park South. It was during this period that I found myself staying on Central Park South with Katragada. The apartment overlooked the green canopy-like watchtower, a perfect place for private conversations, and Katragada was insistent. This can't stay small forever. The right people need to know. But when the right people showed up, they were heavier than I'd expected government men, not just curious officials, but the kind who never knocked twice. Katragada let them in, maybe out of caution, maybe because he sensed that refusing them would only draw more attention. Either way, now they knew, and they were not pleased to have been left out. Before he found me in the lift, Katragada had already gone down to meet them, stepping out onto the curb, leaning in through the tinted windows of their idling SUVs to talk. The conversation was brief but intense. He listened, nodded, and then made his way back inside, the weight of their presence pressing in behind him. A few minutes later, as I stepped into the lift with my bag slung over my shoulder, the doors opened on the 14th floor, and there he was. Katragada slipped in quickly, pressed the button, and before the doors could close, he turned to me with a look that I hadn't seen before. Urgent, deliberate. "They're here," he said. "Who's here?" "Out front. 4 black SUVs, government plates." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a heavy card, cream stock, gold embossed with the American eagle. He pressed it into my hand. The name was stuck in black type. Justin G. Cooper, senior advisor to President Clinton. "He wants in," Katragada said quietly. "He wants to meet you. He wants the chamber. Now. They're out front waiting. They want to know how something like this could exist outside their radar." Through the glass lobby doors I could already see them. 4 dark SUVs idling at the curb, black paint gleaming under the city light. Drivers stayed behind the wheels. Suited figures lingering by the doors, their posture tense, expectant. Katragada leaned in, voice low and urgent. "Arrange it, now. They're not used to being left out." The card felt heavy in my palm, as if the whole weight of Washington had been condensed into embossed paper. I stepped aside, pulled out my phone, and called John. "One of Clinton's advisors wants to visit today," I told him. There was a pause, then his voice came back, flat, unshaken, almost bored. "Wednesday's the best I can do." That was it. No urgency, no interest in SUVs or political power, just the chamber's own rhythm, dictating its terms. I looked back through the glass at the line of black vehicles waiting outside. The tension in the air was electric, but John's dismissal rang clear in my ear. The chamber would not be rushed, not even for them. Sloatsburg's silent construction. Meanwhile, inside the old house in Sloatsburg, a new chamber was taking shape. The original had become almost mythic, but now, in a back room where autumn sunlight slanted through dusty windows, engineers bent copper, tuned coils, and built from Guy's blueprints with strict silent focus. All the equipment, once sprawled of tangled wires, meters, and racks, was being refined and miniaturized, evolving into something you can control for a single sleek 2014 MacBook Pro. The next generation wouldn't just hum with power, it would be portable, precise, and ready for the future. This new version would soon have twins, the design and software destined for Australia and New Mexico, hand-carried by trusted couriers, each destination chosen with care. The constellation was growing. Even in its unfinished state, a quiet procession of visitors passed through. Scientists, skeptics, healers, each drawn by whispers and curiosity. Those who entered spoke of results too consistent to ignore, pain lifting, clarity returning, wounds softening as though history itself could be rewritten. Each emerged wide-eyed, some in disbelief, others in tears, and all of them, doctors, artists, financiers, skeptics, were given the same covenant. Say nothing, reveal nothing. Do not speak of the location. Do not describe the journey inside. Absolutely no social media posts, no photos, no digital traces. This is me, Jordan, speaking again here, but sorry about that, but I'm only reading the article. And here's Guy Obolensky and Michael Leonardo, the filmmaker mentioned here. It was less than a rule than a ritual, a vow to protect the chamber's sanctity. To share its coordinates would be to dilute its mystery, to invite the wrong eyes, to place something sacred in the hands too eager for profit or control. And so they kept silent, even as their transformations rippled outwards in whispers. My own transformation. I'm feeling amazing. I've been in the chamber more than 60 times now. I feel young and vital, 42 years old, but it's like being back in my early 20s. Every month I spend a week in New York City and make sure I get 4 chamber visits in while I'm there. And I've learned the hard way. You can't bring tech inside. I've destroyed my 3rd iPhone 5 now, trying to film in the chamber. All I get is the crackle of the current, a flash. I move in close enough, the current hits my hands and the phone is dead. It's as soon as the tech locks on, the phone fries, like the chamber is trying to heal the frequency distortion it projects. Every time it happens, I'm reminded some mysteries don't want to be captured. But when it's just me, no lens, no device, I can move in close to the mushroom head, right up to full strength, and take the full force of the machine anywhere. Face, hand, feet, even the top of my head. The current doesn't bite. We've also been continuously using IV vitamins as part of the process. The IV bags themselves zapped in the chamber before infusion. The water in the IV bag seems to be perfect. Another level entirely, delivered in the days after the chamber back in New York City. This was a new part of the protocol for some of us, and it felt like the effects reached even deeper, as if the chamber's imprint on the IV solution carried through, amplifying everything that we were already experiencing. Guy said that at this level of refinement, I've been at the chamber more than anyone. I think Malcolm may be able to compete with that. These guys will have to chat it out. On the SCOI system, the results are right there in my chart. My energetic age reaction and tissue age reaction both read as -14, and my overall metabolic age is -1. According to the data, my body is now measuring as biologically younger than my chronological age, sometimes showing readings as if I was in my early teens or even 10 years old. The evidence is clear. Something profound is happening here. And we can see this image from that analysis, bioresonance feedback, anti-aging validation. Over each session, the current seemed to move organically to your next problem area, lingering there until the work felt complete. You might walk in with a sore shoulder or a stiff knee, and that would be first in line to be addressed, as though the machine knew where to begin. As the pain left, you could often feel the emotional weight settle too, a quieting relief that sometimes arrived instantly or unfolded gently over the next 24 hours. There was a dawning consciousness, too, of how everything, body and mind, memory and ache, was aligned, and the realization was delivered just as surely as the relief itself. And here is another image of this anti-aging validation. The constellation unfolding. Back in New York, I carried the card in my pocket like a live wire. Every hum of the chamber, every whisper in the courtyard, every SUV idling out in front reminded me this was no longer just a hidden machine in Sloatsburg. It was becoming a constellation. New York, Mexico, Bali, Croatia, Australia, New Mexico, the Dominican Republic, each point of light connected by unseen currents, drawing in doctors, presidents, actors, and now even the advisors of the former US president, who it turns out are just as eager for a miracle as anyone else, though they do ask more questions about warranty. And like any constellation, it was telling a story, not of stars, but of people, of healing, of time, of that relentless human hope that somewhere between science and silence and possibility next to a garden shed that looks suspiciously like a sauna, we might just find a way to bend reality itself. Alright, and then we're going to move on to the last article that I'm going to read here, and of course there is a few more, as I mentioned. You can go and check them all out, read them for yourself, if you don't want to hear them in my dulcet tones. Alright, this is really getting into the interesting stuff here. This is the stuff I like. Reclaiming time inside the 59-minute portal that reverses a whole minute of reality. And here is the photo that John Esmeyer showed me at Cosmic Summit when I met him. I think it's the same photo. We'll match them up and check. Inside the phaser chamber. Unlocking the secret of time reversal and energy realignment through ancient modern mastery. Alright, I'm just going to skip through the article a little bit. Guy is the only participant in my documentary who isn't a famous keynote speaker, and to me he's the most inspiring of all. An unassuming craftsman with a deep spiritual heart, he's the true guardian of this technology. His story is one of divine guidance and awakening, inspiring testament to what happens when ancient wisdom meets modern ingenuity. His journey started with a simple meditation in his backyard. Sitting in a Kriya Yoga posture, silently asking for guidance, he experienced something incredible. He says he was teleported out of his body into another dimension where he encountered a luminous, Christ-like being with a divine presence filled with love and calm. This being explained time, revealing that our understanding of it is just a fragment of a complex, multi-dimensional reality far beyond linear perception. Guy recounts his experience with gratitude, sharing it as a divine gift, a moment that opened his eyes to deeper mysteries. That divine encounter sparked his mission, inspiring him to build the prototype 8 years ago, a sacred act of faith and intuition. Today, this sacred knowledge has culminated in a handcrafted machine, built with patience, reverence, and an old-world craftsmanship. When the chamber hums to life, it cracks and vibrates with immense power, filling the space with a sharp, invigorating ozone scent, an unmistakable sign of energy at work. At the front of the chamber, there is a clear lens that reduces the current and effects by about half, making the experience more tolerable for first-time users. During the initial session, this lens helps ease the intensity, but on the second trip, a guy removed the lens to increase the effect. The result was truly extraordinary, an intensely bitey, almost electric sensation that required stepping back a bit from the head to tolerate comfortably. The energy felt sharp and fierce, like raw current coursing through the body, leaving a vivid impression of power and force. Inside the chamber, Guy explained that this remarkable effect was achieved through amplifying the current combined with the Schumann resonance, which is around 7.83 Hz, the Earth's natural heartbeat. He described how he amplified this frequency with a precise wave of 7.83 Hz and then forced this wave through the chamber. This process condensed all of that power into a single perfect frequency, which he called the exact harmonic that could harmonize and realign the human body and consciousness. He explained that this special frequency creates a resonant wave, which, when forced into the human inside the chamber, causes a profound correction. The person who was out of sync, disconnected from their natural rhythm, was rebalanced by this wave. Most astonishingly, in just 59 minutes inside the chamber, this correction was so precise that the missing minute, a fragment of time or energy that was out of order, was restored and aligned. It's as if the flow of time itself was reversed or rewound for that individual, bringing their internal clock and energy fields back into harmony. Guy referred to this as time-reversed light, a moment when dissonance is corrected and time reclaims its proper flow. And this is the lens in front of the sphere, force amplification by stimulated energy resonance, the phaser. And here's the exact key detail. While only 59 minutes pass inside the chamber, 60 minutes in 3D time outside pass, meaning that an entire minute of external time is effectively reclaimed or reversed during that session. It's as if the chamber's energy pulls out that missing minute from outside reality, restoring it internally and aligning the individual's perception with a higher multidimensional flow of time. This correction creates a feeling that time itself is being bent or rewound, a wave of time-reversed light illuminating the body and mind with newfound clarity. The individual experiences an intense, bitey, almost electric energy, so sharp that it must be tolerated by stepping back flowing through them, reversing dissonance and restoring harmony. Most remarkable is that this process corrects the out-of-order frequency of the human, effectively restoring the proper flow of their internal time and energy. It's a quantum reset, a wave of harmonic energy that reverses or rewinds a missing minute, aligning the person with higher multidimensional reality. Watching this unfold, I'm filled with awe. This isn't just a machine, it's a portal into the deeper mechanics of time, energy, and consciousness. The stories of healing, awakening, and even time reversal spreading across the borders are a testament to the limitless potential of this ancient modern fusion. This isn't just a journey into energy or healing, it's a celebration of resilience, faith, and the limitless power of love and intention. As I prepared to return to New York City with James, whose daughter experienced her own profound awakening inside the chamber, I realized this story is only just beginning. The future holds infinite possibilities. And I'll allow you to go and check out all of the other articles with the links in the description. Enjoy. Alright, we will leave it there for now. You can browse all of these articles and a few more yourself if you check out the links in the description. But as you can see, he did breach the time dilation topic that myself and Malcolm have been talking about. This is exactly what Malcolm is claiming, not only in regards to plasmoids themselves, but in their application within his inventions, the thunderstorm generator and the direct matter-to-energy drive, or the implosive turbine. The articles also touch on the age reversal subject, like biological age reversal, something which Malcolm had told me about personally before. He may have mentioned it in some of the interviews as well, I'm not sure. But that his biological age was reversed by about 30 or more years, according to the tests that he had before and after his infusion process. So can you get infused with plasmoids yourself? Well, you best subscribe to Alchemical Science and hit the notification bell, and I'll let you know when you can take your own trip into Tesla and Guy Obelinski's famous secret chamber. Thanks for watching. I'm Jordan Collin, a student of Malcolm Bendel, and you're watching Alchemical Science. I'll see you next time.